Hello, hello. I think this is working. Pretty sure. Yes.
It's dense. It's like
Morgan, David, you are able to be heard by the stream.
Hello, we were just talking about Wheel of Time and Dune.
Nice. All right. I got a few extra tiles to show off before we get started today. I just want you guys to know.
Just so you know, I still see the serious.
Oh, I don't know. Give it a moment. Give it a moment. Ooh, yes. Fancy. So I just wanted to shout out so people know that Serious Play and the Ludic Society are brought to you in partnership with the Center for 21st Century Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I don't have a catchy tagline to throw after this, but maybe we can come up with one.
But do you know who Akechi Goro is?
I do know who Akechi Goro is. Also, Serious Play, Serious Play is not, but the Ludic Society is brought to you in partnership with the Vehemence group, who help us by helping us reach our fans and also helping us select new games to cover. If you're looking for a place that's inclusive to play some cool ARGs, the Vehemence Discord server is just a QR code away, and they will become really, really, really important. Coming up very soon, actually next couple streams from now, but I don't want to say too much right now. Anyway, welcome to the Ludic Society. I'm Ren. You guys know me as the main host and also the ARG dumbass at UWM, and I'm joined by two lovely friends and co-hosts.
I'm David Kutchik. I'm a PhD student in English here at UW-Milwaukee.
I am Morgan. I am a master's student in anthropology.
Master's PhD.
My brain was just like, meh, mush.
That should help your audio. You guys were really quiet, so I just bumped you way up.
I will eat my mic. Move it slightly closer.
Does that help you guys? Is that making things better for them?
Are we slightly louder?
I would hope that you're slightly louder.
Are we maybe me?
I think so. I think we're good.
I think the whole thing is just kind of quiet.
Oh no. Well, I know there's some music I have running in the background that is just supposed to duck under us, so I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah, that's better. Sweet.
Awesome. Sweet. All right. So, hopefully that's all kind of fixed. Welcome back. Before we get invested in this lovely end to this amazing thing we've been covering for God knows how long, I want to just make sure we get our land acknowledgement in. I'm sure David has some sort of charity he'd also like to plug. So
sure. So I will pull up the land acknowledgement now. So we acknowledge that in Milwaukee we live and work on traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, and Menominee homeland along the southwest shores of Michigamme, part of North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin, Sovereign, Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. This past week, for the Canadian Game Studies Conference, I promise this relates. They have what I think is a very excellent land acknowledgement. And I am just gonna put a little link to that.
awesome.
Just to show you guys, I think, not that ours is bad, but I kind of want to update ours to reflect more of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take a look at it there. And I'm also gonna copy. I won't copy and paste it in the chat because it's kind of long. But I like it because it's a little more upfront and saying like, hey, we only benefit this because of colonial violence. And so, yeah, if anybody here has any knowledge about land acknowledgements or that kind of stuff and want to give me some pointers, let me know. Janelle and I are talking about putting together dating this one. So
Hell yeah. Yeah, also, I've said this before, but this maintains something I want to throw out there. I find, at least I've found in my research, that as much as I love ARGs and everything that gets made in our community, it's still very, like, white male dominant. So any ARGs you want to plug in chat that for us to look at that are POC or run by, women or other genders, I am super down to cover those and kind of put a spotlight on those ARGs that don't necessarily get as much visibility. So, that'd be great. And also I'm like, so I can announce a couple things that we're working on, because I think in the coming weeks our logo and stuff will finally be done, and I can unveil that stuff, which is great. But I also might set up a Google phone account that will be a tip line. So hopefully you guys can actually like call a number and leave a tip for the Ludic Society, which I think will be kind of fun. Hopefully we won't get like bombed. It's a little project I'm working on, but we'll see if it goes anywhere. Yeah.
Oh, something cool I found. I forgot. I'll also post it here. This is a link to the Indigenous Interactive Digital Media and Video Game Database. Has links to video games and works and some popular press works about Indigenous game development. So I think that'd be awesome to take a look at.
Groovy Lobster, if you send me voicemails on the tip line literally every week, that will be amazing. Hell yeah. That's awesome. Maybe we should add Find Maddie Griffin to the list of stuff to cover too. And Ash Black, if Cafe and Diner is, hell yeah. Fantastic. All right. So let's get to today's stuff. Because it sounds like the increasing list of shit for us to cover that'll take us into next year. Well, today we're wrapping up Stockroach, which is kind of crazy. This is the real finale. And so I've put together a lovely gift from the creator himself, a PDF of sections of 34 sonnets that I want to cover with you guys. And then I also want to spend some time at the end just talking about our thoughts on the series in general, and how far we've come, maybe final readings of the piece, things like that. And then at the very end, there's a big announcement to make about upcoming stuff. I promise to the creator of Stockroach that I'm not going to unveil anything too much, except for that the event is occurring. So we'll leave it at that, and the day that it's probably happening on. But yeah, 34 sonnets. So don't mistake that this is a bit of a not normal Ludic Society. Everybody in the room has read 34 sonnets. At least skimmed it. So I'm not the only one who knows what's going on in this collection, for once. But because it just wouldn't be good for like a book review kind of stream for you guys not to have read the fucking book.
Ren, to maybe perhaps interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you like to put some sort of backing on the chat so we can actually see it on the stream?
Yeah, I can do that. Actually,
or you can just make the background black. That would also work.
I actually know what to do for this pretty quickly. There should be I just need to take the chat box. Hold on, I should be able to do this anyway. I know what to do. Okay.
David, do you like reading poetry?
Not particularly.
Okay.
I like it, but I kind of need to be in the right mood for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like it's when I like to be reflective, like when I'm kind of in like that kind of mood is when I like to do poetry. But generally, I don't like to read it in like a daily life kind of thing. But I also don't read a lot of fiction either.
That's fair. I don't typically. I think mostly because I just don't know where to find said poetry. But like, of course, like in high school when they're like, oh, read this Robert Frost poem or read this poem, I enjoy like those kind of classical poems. I think I would count Robert Frost as my favorite poet because he wrote my favorite poem. So yeah,
and I like
I think he wrote I think it's called like Cellar in the Woods or A House in the Woods or something like that. It's about a house being abandoned in the woods.
That's a very
it resonated. It resonated with me.
Yeah, I like being present for poetry readings. I think that's fun. I think since poetry is like more of a delivered medium rather than a written medium, I think it's always of course, like some poetry is deliberately meant to be read. In fact, most I would say that's published now is meant to be read and not heard.
That should be high enough
But
contrast.
I still like.
Yeah, that's okay.
I like being in a live situation.
You know,
and
actually,
I think these ones. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say actually, it's really funny that you say that because it's kind of a long-term myth of the poetry community that poetry is meant to be spoken rather than written. It comes from this really bizarre historical misunderstanding of the scop as a poet who would go to the court and then read for the king or something like that, right? But there's no like actual historical evidence that would incur that these mythical scops ever actually like existed, at least in the way that we understand them.
Okay.
And so there may be some, like, it's not that poetry obviously doesn't have an oral component. It absolutely does. But this, like, the orality that we give poetry, as opposed to its written form, is more like, it comes out of this, like, desire to be close to the origins of storytelling that I don't know that poetry actually has, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm not, like, I'm saying, like, current modern poetry production.
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean? 100%.
For me, like, reading, to kind of circle around into reading these particular poems, they reminded me very much of me going back and reading my poetry from high school. Because my poetry from high school, I was not in a great mental place in high school or early college. So going back and reading that kind of stuff is A, really cringy, because emo phase, but B, you can almost, like, poetry is very feeling orientated, so you can kind of feel the feeling, but you're so disconnected. Oh no, you're not getting some of my old poems. They are bad.
Come on.
Oh,
we
no.
have to.
But I do have my subject, my writing notebook from that time period. And in beautiful my things, it says writing journal, because I forgot the N in journal.
Of course.
It's very, it's
rather fitting, even.
Yeah, rather fitting. But like reading these are like, oh, okay, so this is some high school kid writing out his feelings in poetry, and I totally am like in that mind space. I'm like, I'm here for it.
Yeah, And I hope that this was enjoyable for you guys. I think like sometimes people, to the access question, I could point you to poetry resources, but I'm also, somebody who's been writing poetry for 5 years, and taking classes in undergrad for it.
Yeah,
I think
artful
before that,
poetry.
I didn't know where to get it. It's like, it's so, there's so much like, well, there's a weird mix of elitism and disinterest around the form that has put it in this really bizarre spot. Where, like, on one hand, poetry is something that anybody can use to write out their ideas, but because of the way it's taught, sometimes people don't realize that it's a space for them. And also, the place where poets now go to do work, if they want to get paid, is they teach at university campuses, which is not conducive to a not elitist form.
And the poetry professors that I knew who published poetry at my undergrad were the most pretentious people from the West Coast.
Oh, of course.
They were from Seattle. They drank really fancy coffee. They were very pretentious. In my, like, they were just like, I'm at a tech school. I'm going to write poetry.
Well, luckily...
So that kind of also flavors my understanding of poetry,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, of course.
So here we are with 34 of the greatest sonnets ever written. By T.S. Roach, who we've previously understood is the Stockroach, thus making T.S. Eliot the Stock Eliot. So I do want to like. Oh, go ahead.
I'm interrupting you, Ren. This is called Sonnets.
Yes.
Mr. Poetry Man, what is a sonnet?
What is a sonnet? Well, okay.
Like,
do you want the
like,
modern definition or the classical definition? Or the definition that matters for this?
A definition that matters for this, because like reading the poems, you kind of get an idea of like every other line sort of rhymes. It looked like that's kind of what I was catching, but I also have no idea.
Well, so a Shakespearean sonnet, which is what matters to this collection, is a set of 14 lines, usually broken into 3 small stanzas at the top, 4 lines each, and 2 lines at the end. And the idea of these 3 small stanzas is that they have interlocking rhyme schemes. In other words, the first line rhymes with the third line, the second line rhymes with the fourth line. Now, other things that are important, the last 2 lines are a couplet and tend to deliver some sort of punch. Between one of those breaks, there's usually a turn. And a turn is a point in which the poem takes on a new meaning. So, maybe if you're in your love poem, the first 4 lines are like this doting affection for your lover, and then between the next stanza, the next 4 lines, it turns into this like critique of their nose or something, right? Like something that'd be a really bad turn, but you get the idea.
Or maybe it's like a self-reflection, like, oh, I love you so much, but also like, I'm not good enough for you. So.
Yeah. Or maybe I love you so much, but I'm actually in love with myself. And then it transfers into that. There's lots of ways you can do it.
Good narcissism, yeah.
Yeah. So the turn's very important to the sonnet. It's also worth pointing out that a traditional Shakespearean sonnet is done in iambic pentameter, which means there are 5 feet. Yes, 5 feet in a line, and each. Can I have it right? Am I mixing up my words? I might be.
What are?
No, I think that's correct. I think it's 5 feet in a line. And I'm having a moment. I'm trying to figure out if I've mixed up my words. I'm sure that Groovy Lobster could tell me if I have. Anyway, each foot is a different metrical thing. So an iamb is a. No, excuse me, my bad. Okay, so there are 10 syllables in a line, pentameter, and the 5 in the pentameter is 5 feet. The feet are iambs, which are 2-syllable sets of tones. So an iamb is an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. Iambs are one kind of foot. There are tons of different kinds of feet, and they appear in different metrical schemes. You will notice, perhaps as you're reading this, if you have an eye for meter, that some of the lines don't do the ba-bum, right? They do a different pattern. A unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable is called a trochee. I think that's right. Did I have that backwards? Just so unstressed is I am unstressed by stressed is trochee. I think that's correct. Yeah. Thanks, David. And so usually, a pure sonnet will have 5 iambs in a line, 10 syllables, and then the rhyme at the end. And then but the fun thing about sonnets is when you start playing with that form, right? So we may see moments in this, if we get deep enough into the analysis of these poems, where the meter isn't exactly what you'd expect it to be. And that's, those are points of intrigue. The fun thing about all of this, of course, is that you can throw it all out of the window to some extent and just read the poems, or you can read the poems with this eye for how the form is supposed to work. You may notice that there aren't really stanza breaks in these poems as we go through them. And that's a choice to move away from the traditional format. What you'll find is that modern sonnets really are any poem that is 14 lines long with a couplet at the end. And
they don't do the rhyming scheme? That's the far
Not
part.
necessarily. Really, like, we've played with the sonnet form for so many centuries at this point that the form has changed almost entirely from its original shape. And so there are people who are writing traditional Shakespearean, traditional Petrarchian sonnets, but on the whole, what we're really kind of looking at is a form that has turned into 14 lines with a turn and a couplet at the end. And sometimes the couplet doesn't even really need to rhyme. So on the whole, when you look at the modern renditions and this, you'll find that these are pretty pure Shakespearean sonnets, all things considered.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that's important because it's choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't know if it's reflective of, because it's like, as we'll see going through the poems, it's interesting that it's a sonnet. Like, it's kind of, I don't know, it's reflective both of like the Roach character, but also the fact that it's a constructed thing. It's not like an actual high schooler.
Yes. So I the first thing I did is I annotated in the picture of the cover that was sent to me by the Roach. And I should say that it was not sent to me by the Roach in character. This is sent to me by the Roach, as in the creator of Stockroach. I want to make that distinction. So this is the cover for 34 Sonnets. David currently has my physical copy, or I'd probably be waving that around. Ah, there it is. Perfect. And
wave it around.
It's a good fan.
So, just to show off this cover, and maybe I know you can't judge a good book by its cover, but maybe we can judge this book by its cover, even though it is a good book. What did you think of the cover? Do you have any comments on it? Do you enjoy it?
Yeah, I mean, right? It's in the Stockroach stuff.
Yeah, it's got really nice paper. The physical copy is like it's a joy to touch. For some big book nerds, that's important.
For me, it like reading some of the poems and then coming back to the cover, it makes sense because as we'll kind of, I don't know if I should spoil it or not, but as we kind of see,
spoil what you
a lot
want.
a lot of stuff comes from like Night Roach or like random scribblings from him. So it's like that is like, as we figured out with Stockroach, the angel kind of represents Night Roach. So. So it makes sense that he's on the cover.
Yeah, no,
a lot of the poems are sent in by the Night Roach.
It's a bold cover too. I mean, like, and I mean that in the sense of like, it's a cover that is really. Is something happened? Are we frozen on Discord?
Yes.
No?
Oh
yes,
God.
we are.
Why are we frozen on?
But
Discord?
not on Discord. We're back.
What? Okay, hold on. I have to. There.
Wait, what?
What is going on?
Huh?
For some reason, Morgan's face is going, but
We're frozen.
Are not.
I don't know what the fuck's up with that. Hold on, let me try to.
I'm just gonna keep
we might just have to live with this. I don't know what to do with it because I can't just like reset the. I can't fix the scenes without going into them. Well, I guess that's not the worst thing in the world. Sorry for the weird shit, guys. I gotta get this tried. I'm gonna try to reset the Discord thing.
But yeah.
Anyway, go on, please.
Did you? Sometimes I know I minimize Discord and then it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, don't do that. Don't minimize anything with Streamlabs.
Yeah, I'm not doing it. David, you started updating, but I'm still frozen. So maybe it'll just work itself out. Who knows?
Let me look at this. This giant color.
Now you get to see behind our process.
Ooh.
Yeah, no kidding. So, but yeah, no, the cover's very nice. Morgan is the only one who has not touched the cover, but it's very silky. But
it's like a nice matte finish.
Yeah. Hold on, let me turn off my camera and turn it back on. That might fix some of the issues too. I don't know. It did not. I don't know why it's not updating. I could not tell you.
Here is a circuit diagram from one of my high school classes. To have this journal. Oh, it's ridiculous.
Oh man, it really does not want to work. I could not fucking tell you. All right. Oh, hey, I fixed it. There we go. Yahtzee. All right, there we go. So anyway, but yeah, it's very nice to touch. I agree with the Night Roach stuff. It's a bold cover in that it is the only poetry book I've ever seen with a cover that is an MS Paint drawing. And that's somewhat I think, good. I'm glad that there wasn't like anything touched up on the cover. Actually, I mean, I don't know what degree of touch up was done on this. It does look good. But you can tell it's a rough drawing, and I think that works for what it is, the material on the inside.
Well, it definitely looks very like, it doesn't look like it's like super photoshopped or anything, but it does still, like, it's one of the Roach's like better drawings, you know?
Oh sure. Well, he's gotten a lot better over the course of the series too, you know, I think, as an artist. So it really shows off that. It does seem to me that I like the hand-drawn font as well.
Yes.
And it's a surprisingly consistent hand-drawn font.
I'm pretty sure.
I was gonna say my hand-drawn, I would never be able to do anything consistent when it came to freehand drawing stuff, ever.
It kind of just looks like a Wacom.
Oh,
like
sure.
Like writing with Wacom, like tablet pens, have a very different look than like drawing with a pen.
Yes.
So the way that digital pressure and such.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, to read the back of the cover for everybody. Passion, self-doubt, friendship, unrequited love. In this incandescent debut collection, billionaire investor turned poet T.S. Roach invites us on an odyssey into the deepest reaches of the human soul. Embodying the spirit of a lovelorn adolescent, despite being in his late 30s, he writes with intoxicating clarity in immaculate verse about the turbid internal world of the human consciousness. 34 Sonnets is a poetry collection for the ages. Which is very, very back cover of a poetry collection.
Yes, it is.
Oh my god. It's amazing to me. I've read a lot of poetry blurbs, and it's amazing to me how many poetry blurbs that are written by people who advised the writer like earlier in their career come off as if the person has not actually read the collection.
Well, let me give you a little plot twist. They haven't.
You don't think so?
No.
Oh,
Are you kidding
I don't know, man. I mean, David Wojan always did, but that's one poet in a sea of thousands.
Yeah. Well, at least I'm thinking, like, especially with academic volumes, like, you know, they haven't read all that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, they definitely skimmed it, and that's it, if at all.
Yeah.
David's a bit particular, so I imagine he might have actually read the whole thing all the time. But this one's also not like dedicated. This is clearly just the publisher talking.
Yeah.
But, you know, which leads me to wonder what a second volume of 34 Sonnets with like dedications or like assessments on the back would even look like. But, you know,
I need to know like how much of this, like, is Kevin Y an actual person?
Kevin Y? Well, okay, so Kevin Y is a character.
Those characters, I thought so.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
It's more complicated than that, but for the sake of Stockroach, Kevin Y is a character.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so I showed off, I put this like thing here just so we could see the cover very quickly. I also wanted to put the dedication in here. It's dedicated to all money grubs, past, present, and future. So if you are yet to be a money grub, get on that shit. This book is dedicated to you.
With five periods,
With
not
5
just the standard
periods.
ellipse. It had five. It has 5 of them.
I thought it would be important to read the foreword on stream because it's really good, but it's also really narratively significant to the collection. I did not include the afterword. The book does include an afterword, and the afterword has the kind of sonnet crown poem of the book. By that I mean, so a sonnet crown is a set of sonnets that have where the last, I think it's the last couplet or maybe the last line of the couplet. When you take all of those and put them together from each individual sonnet, a new sonnet is formed. It's one of the more like difficult poetic forms to work with, because imagine trying to fit all the strict rules of a sonnet and by the end make a sonnet out of sonnets. It's a nightmare. Especially because of the rhyme scheme and getting your meter right and trying to be consistent across that final poem. Thankfully, the kind of crowning moment of this piece is not, I mean, it does do that, but it doesn't necessarily have to. I think, at least I don't feel like personally it would have had to conform to a really tight form to work. But I want people who are interested in this book to go out and get it so that they can read that final piece as like the final send off to the series, because I think showing it on stream would just be too much.
It's also a great capstone to the whole thing. So if you had just like not picked up on the story at all, or like had kind of gotten lost throughout it, reading that last sonnet is like, oh, this is what this ARG was about.
Yeah.
This is the through line of, and this is particularly like the only time that Night Roach is really like talked about or like actually like confronted or like is in print.
Confronted is an interesting word. I think that's very accurate here, actually.
Yeah, and
Kevin's
like
definitely struggling with Night Roach across the entire collection.
Yeah, but like that last sonnet poem thingy is very much, this is what this is about. This is who Night Roach is, kind of, and goodbye.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a really nice capstone to the whole ARG.
I should say also that the book is on the Etsy store for $10, which is a really reasonable price, honestly, for this collection. I would recommend buying it. I'm probably going to be buying more than a copy. at some point because I wanted to I sent David a copy of the Remember thing, and I felt bad that I didn't send Morgan anything, so that's what we're doing. But yeah, good. so yeah, if you haven't bought and you want to support the Stockroach creator, it's just a great way to throw some stuff that way. This is, in some ways, this stream is an advertisement for the book, in that we're doing a book review and reading selected text. So if you enjoy it, go check it out.
It's SpawnCon.
Yeah. So I want to go through the forward. The forward has really like 2 voices in it. So if does somebody want to be the Stockroach in this reading? Or do you want to be
I can read it off mine.
Either one.
I can be Stockroach. I'll write the little message.
Awesome.
Okay.
Or read the little message.
T.S. Roach can't be real. That's what I thought as I read and reread the below message sent to me via unsolicited Twitter DM in early summer 2021.
Dear Miss Lynn Rogers, thank you for following my twitter.com profile. I hope you have appreciated the financial advice, vice versa, which I have been residing, and that Yoru will laugh us grown manifold in the time being. Excuse me. I am to inquire vis-a-vis whether you are a real poet and if you could look at some poems I have written. How do you tell when a poem is good? Love, T.S. Roach.
As someone who works in publishing, I am no stranger to odd emails. I'm also no stranger to receiving publication requests via Twitter, though I generally prefer not to. I thought, given the sheer flex of typos, that this was spam, the kind likely to ask me to wire or send a cashier's check to a strap for cash overseas prints. But there was also something familiar about the voice. I looked at the handle again, then the bitmappy profile pic. Back in December 2020, an account called Stockroach Real had followed me on Twitter. This person retweeted an installment of my Catapult magazine, Internet as Intimacy column, and dubbed me today's Money Grub of the Month. I didn't know what that meant, but decided to play along and follow the Stockroach back. I more or less forgot about this account until I received that message. 2 days later, he followed up.
Hello, just following up. Love, T.S. Roach.
And then an hour after that.
Acutely, I wanted to know if you could be the editor for my new pottery collection.
I didn't realize, my brain elides the misspellings, so I hadn't realized.
I want to stay honest to the original.
I appreciate that. I do want to see the Stockroach pottery collection, so whenever that comes out, DM me. So I could have let go. I watched myself have a "what am I getting into" feeling. And then I watched his YouTube videos. Where can I begin? The channel, The Stockroach Official, is ostensibly a resource for advice on stocks, cryptocurrencies, savings, and side hustles to help the entire money ecosystem grow. But the uncanny is pervasive even 30 seconds into the first video, episode 1, What is Cash Money? The creator doth protest too much about his age, his financial success, his many sons, while fumbling through screen shares that reveal incriminatingly labeled desktop folders, notes to self, and hot anime girls. This can't be real, I kept thinking. The videos feel like someone earnestly and repeatedly crashing a toy car into a wall while professing to be a professional stunt driver. What I'm saying is that they're strangely moving. Why? I kept asking. Who is this for? In video after video, the Stockroach positions himself as a generous authority, imparting something to us, the viewers, something that we need that only he can give. But as the tautological PowerPoints and demise of decrepit laptop progress, and the bizarre lies and conflations and glitches, Jeff Bezos equaling Steve Jobs, President Bill Joden, checking the Jow Dones, become more and more outlandish, the Stockroach maintains an emotional frequency of melancholy, some deep longing for genuine connection. And below the more obvious falsehoods and misdirections, the suggestion of a hidden, inexpressible truth, one he seems to be unwilling to share, perhaps not even with himself. As I fell deeper into these videos, often including original music, bizarrely well conceived for someone who could hardly type or remember his own age, and secrets I had become obsessed with the answer to, what is he hiding and is any of this real? Then I had to wonder, if T.S. Roach is not real, then what does that make me? I was the one finding his messages, weighing their import, combing through his creations for clues to their meaning. The world of the videos seemed imaginary, and yet I felt so much a part of it, almost as if I was merely some secondary character in this fictional world. Although it felt like an entire alternate timeline had passed, really it had only been a couple days of binge watching at this point. I responded to T.S. Roach's message as politely as possible, and for the sake of my mental health, declined to edit his poetry collection. Instead, I referred him to Kevin Y., a poet and essayist with connections to micropress Soot Sprite Books, which published the second edition of my own pottery. Wow, my brain is slow. My own poetry chapbook after the first edition went out of print. Kevin Y. asked if I could write into the intro to his collection. Having taken some time and space away from the Stockroach official YouTube channel and Twitter, I checked in with myself and found that I would. That was the last I'd heard from Kevin Y., who is normally punctual and responsive, and from whom this entire manuscript is due to the printer later today. I have not seen what Kevin Y. was able to make out of T.S. Roach's manuscript. Assuming we somehow meet the deadline and this book ever actually exists, I will not have time to edit this. I wanted to end this intro with a description of what the poetry collection might make you think or feel, but that's difficult to do without having read the thing. I hope to offer some connection about the T.S. Roach internet persona and some truth about the real person, some proof that he definitely actually is real. But at some point, real ceases to be meaningful. Even what's factual about a person must be filtered through subjective experience, our own and any witnesses. We are always audience, even to our own experiences. Experience becomes a story, a narrative we can shape for our own understanding. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories that are only spaces where we can be the hero. Sometimes we tell ourselves stories to convince us to stay quiet, convince us that no one else will understand. And sometimes these stories, real or not, can make someone, far away and secluded and wary, feel less alone. Maybe T.S. Roach's poetry collection will make you feel something like that. But then again, maybe not. Honestly, I have no idea. Here goes, I guess. Sarah Lynn Rogers, New York City, 2021.
So I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is Sarah Lynn Rogers another creation of the creator, or is Sarah Lynn Rogers a co-creator? Is this a person who's writing with them?
I believe this is a real person, actually.
Okay.
This is where the boundary starts to get blurry. I'm not sure, but there is a collection of poetry that is on Soot Sprite Books. That's a chapbook that generally seems to be real. I should say also, for those of you who are not in the poetry community, a chapbook is a small collection of poems that you send out before you make an anthology. Usually it's a test of ideas that are more tightly woven together than the actual collection will be. Like, a poetry collection usually has 3 or 4 different things running through it. A chapbook usually only has like 1 or 2, maybe. It's usually a small number of poems, maybe at most 20. So, in all honesty, the Stockroach anthology collection, 34 Sonnets, is really more accurately described as a chapbook.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Sarah Lynn Rogers is playing Sarah Lynn Rogers.
Just like Tim in Marble Hornets is playing Tim, who's playing Tim. Yeah, it's very fun. But yeah, I like this introduction because I think in all parts it feels like somebody who actually like watched the series in full. Like that was very much my experience, I think, going through it, outside of like having to ask whether Stockroach was real or not, you know? But it's like the themes are all there. Yeah. It's an astoundingly good recap in 4 pages.
Yeah, they're kind of like, well, this is, again, it kind of goes back to like this book is kind of the penultimate conclusion of the series. It's like, hey, if you wanted to sum up of all my arguments, the point of the ARG and the feelings, here's the conclusion. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But I definitely agree with all what she's saying. She definitely is playing the role of Watson as the character, as the reader insert.
Yes, absolutely. And she is like the thing she's questioning about realism here and the importance of like realness in the stories that we tell ourselves, at least, is actually like a really fascinating way of looking at the series, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. right? Those are definitely vital questions to ask about any mediated product in general. Is just like, does realism really matter? I don't know. I don't think it really does. Right? And I think it's good. It's asking questions about, whether we should consider whether or not something is real, right, or happening in real life, whatever that means, is worthy of being questioned.
I can see the chat in the window, so I see Tromboomer throwing out there that when she was made Money Grove of the Month, we were like, this poor poet and writer. And
we don't know anything of the creator's like background.
Well, I mean, I kind of do now, but you guys don't know.
Okay.
We don't know.
Yeah.
So it could very well be this person that the creator knows and was like, here, let me just rope you in here.
Yeah, and if Trom is aware of exactly what this person's relationship is, and if that's been made public, then Trom can share it. But those sorts of questions, there is a special announcement that might help answer those things later.
Yes.
But it's a really good intro. It really is like an excellent intro to the book. And I felt like we needed to read it on stream, one, just to get it out there, but two, because it sets the tone for where the collection is really going. In terms of how it plans on questioning, how it plans on questioning these ideas that the series has been questioning. Plus, it's refreshing to see somebody outside of Stockroach, the main series, engage with Stockroach. Like, it does feel, there is like an element to, I think, the ARG for me that feels like I've been underwater for 2 months trying to cover this and get my head around it, and seeing somebody else engage with it is like, oh, okay, cool, I can breathe a little bit here,
I see what you mean.
Yeah. I don't get that with every game, but with this one, definitely. It's like trying to get so into the way that Stockroach behaves and thinks about the world that it's very nice to see somebody else struggle with that.
You also get a piece of literature that doesn't have any typos.
Yes.
Which is also nice.
Yes, it is. Which is to say nothing of, whether or not it's a bad thing that there are typos. I like the typos for the Roach, and like as somebody who is a tiny bit dyslexic.
Oh no, it like totally makes sense. It's nice to see it adds that realism.
Yeah.
Like when they're like, oh, is this person real because of the whole package of, dyslexia, etc., etc. Nothing to say about Night Roach, which is just a bunch of M's and things.
Yeah.
But this is kind of, it's a contrast of this is fully edited thing versus not edited things.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about poets writing prose, by the way, is that you can always tell when somebody was a poet first. In that they use commas where an essayist would use periods.
I use so many commas because I read my essays aloud.
That does it too. Well, I think the commas are often like the soft pauses instead of the hard pauses are what really differentiates oral feeling writing from written feeling writing.
Yeah.
And
then someone goes, this needs to be a period, this needs to be a semicolon. I'm like, but I don't want it to be a semicolon or a period.
Yeah.
I want it to be a comma.
Yeah.
So I have selected for us 7 poems in combination of the ones that I have chosen. Morgan threw one into the pot, which will be the second one we cover, and Tromboomer Knuckles threw one into the pot as well. Actually, several, directed me to several that he thought would be nice. So, thank you, Tromboomer, and thank you, Morgan, for helping collect these collected works of collected works.
See, and for me, I'm more interested in the little footnotes. So I was just like, whatever poems we want to do, right? But I have some thoughts about the footnotes.
The footnotes there are like 2 stories going on here. There are the actual poems, and then the editor who has to deal with the poems.
And let me just say, as it relates to this whole thing with the editor, it was a really hard to pick which poems to include in this stream, because I was like, do I choose based on the poems, or do I curate the footnotes, because they really are 2 equally important lines of narrative moving through this work. Yeah. So you're not seeing You're not seeing the whole thing, by the way, chat, like to make that abundantly clear. And the footnotes, to understand the story that's going in the footnotes, you really need to read every single footnote, I think. Yeah.
Or a majority of them.
Yeah, you could probably skip a few here and there, but a lot of them are very important to understanding how Kevin Y is going through this. So, but I'd be obviously remiss not to pick the first poem in the collection, because it is just the perfect example of setting the tone for what the rest of the poems are going to be like. So, would either of you like to do the reading of this one, or do you want me to do the reading?
You can do this one, since
All right.
you wanted to make sure to start with this one.
Shall I compare thee to a dollar bill? I cannot hold or fold or spend you, but does not your valued role that you fulfill make you in money similar somewhat? You both bring happiness when you arrive, and sadness lives wherever you're not found. You are both that for which I daily strive. I try real hard to keep you both around. But wealth is even fun to give away. By giving, you can buy yourself new things, while I would not give up a single day, touched by the joy that being near you brings. You are not like to cash, for I would not trade you for any other thing I sought. And that's that. Would somebody like to read the footnote as well for this one?
All right, so the collection begins with an obvious reference to Shakespeare's Sonnet 18, perhaps the most celebrated exemplar of the form. It is a clever choice. I would argue it's not very clever. Instantly placing his work in conversation with the grand and storied tradition of sonneteering.
Being savage as always.
I once asked TSR while gathering biographical information for the back cover copy and publicity materials what he thought of Shakespeare and the relationship between his own work and that of the old master. He responded in typically cryptic T.S. Roach fashion, "Is he the one that wrote the Mark Twain books?"
I think that note kind of exemplifies what happened through like a lot of the footnotes of him being like, I did this thing, and I think like Roach did this interesting, clever thing that I think means X and Y, and really brings the contrast between these two themes to bear. And then I asked if that was the thing with Roach, and Roach just went, eh? That's like the whole, like that's a lot of what the notes are.
I'm excited to talk.
Yeah, it's great. A lot of it's just like, I don't know, I have to check, because I don't want to, like, overstep.
Yeah, just moderate between
there's one footnote that I want to point out, but I don't know if we have that footnote, and if we do have that footnote, then I'm not gonna touch it.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah, go ahead. Like I said, there's only a handful in here, so
yeah, I think it's not here. One of them is like, I did all of these changes, and I really wanted to capture what he was saying because he was missing words, and then I sent it to Roach, and Roach was like, I don't see any difference. That was the footnote.
Yes.
It's like, I don't see any changes. But the editor had like put different words in and like supplemented things that he thought was the actual like word that he was thinking of. And Roach was like, yeah, I don't see any difference.
I had selected the possibility of doing Sonnet 6, and mainly because Stuart emailed me in the middle of a faculty senate meeting and said, this is great, Sonnet 6 is amazing, detailed exactly that as a reason he thought it was amazing, and then asked when we were doing the special that comes after this one. So, you know, I really thought about it.
Stuart being very attentive during a faculty senate meeting. They're probably very boring.
Yeah, I can't imagine that they aren't. And Stuart,
oh yeah, it is Sonnet 6, and it's like a paragraph long. Like, here's all these edits I did, and then Roach, I don't see any differences.
It's so good. Sonnet 6 is a real winner. Actually, Sonnet 6 itself, one of my least favorite sonnets in the book. Sonnet 6's footnote, one of my favorite footnotes in the book.
Yeah, it is kind of one of the more stock and barrel, sort of. I think that's the term. But it's the more stock, sort of like, this is just kind of a cool, nice poem. Whereas the other ones, you're like, oh, I see where this is going. I see the themes.
Yeah, it's a really, like, that one in particular is
still
like
nice.
A moment where, like, if I was reading an actual, like, teenager writing that, I'd be like, oh, I see you're elevating your craft. You're really, like, thinking about how to use imagery now and moving away from just being, like, very direct in your storytelling. Like, this is a great step forward. It's like somebody, if I was, like, going in and instructing that teenager, which is why it's a fucking incredible sonnet as far as capturing the kind of person that T.S. Roach is as a poet. It's an amazing like study of persona, but it also just is not one that is super compelling to me as a reader if I'm looking at this as a collection, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you did it, you've got the form down, but you lost your soul in the process of the
I think it's just that like I'm looking at this so much in terms of its narrative that like the non-narrative poetry doesn't hit as hard for me, but not that it's bad.
We aren't showing it, so we should probably move on.
Yes, we should move on. We should talk about this one. So, you know, I don't know how you can beat the line, "Shall I compare thee to a dollar bill?" Like that really is like, if there's one line in this entire collection that solidifies the poetry stylings of T.S. Roach, it's that line.
Shall I compare thee to a dollar bill? Dollar bills, y'all.
Like if we're gonna view this as like a, because it's a good starting point because his YouTube channel also started with "What is cash?"
Yes. Oh, it's
what
perfect.
Is money?
That's so good.
So it's a nice parallel of the sonnet starts with cash, YouTube starts with cash.
And like the actually when you put it like that, the trajectory of the poems through this is 1 through 34 really continue to go to like towards in the same trajectory and tone as the YouTube channel does at like almost the same rate, which is really fascinating too now that you bring it up, right? Because they slowly start divulging more and more about his life, and then the Night Roach really takes over about halfway through. That's really cool. It's a neat little microcosm when you think about the collection like that. Yeah. I don't have a ton to say about this particular poem. I just really wanted to make sure the first one got in. It is obviously about Ashley. The U here is.
I thought it was
Ashley.
about a dollar bill.
Well, who knows?
It's about Ashley holding a dollar bill.
It could be about Ashley holding a dollar bill. I do love it is like, it does really bring us back to like the early days of the stream, and sometimes not just because we're talking about money again, but because the conflation of like the primary subject of the poem is like, what is money's actual value and what is the value of it to the Stockroach, which were questions we were trying to answer in like episode 1 and episode 2. Yeah, those are the questions that brought us to talk about the Great Recession.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
And the conceptualization of money and such.
Yeah. So it's like, you're absolutely right. It's a great like historical thing. I do think it's also funny to conflate Mark Twain and Shakespeare. That's top tier. That's really like one of the other things I absolutely love about this collection is that the jokes in the editors section range from totally accessible to really weird niche, like literary folks are gonna get this. And I the second half of those just I love them.
I feel like maybe we can talk about this in somewhat context, because I don't know anything about the creator, but it might be, I don't know, a far stretch or maybe not a far stretch to presume that the editor can kind of be the plug-in, be the Tom Bombadil of the Stockroach creator. Be like, this is a creator, this is like the jokes I want to make because this is like where I'm going, but also like that's not in Roach character, so I'm gonna put it in.
That'd be interesting. I wonder how, maybe that's something we can add to the list of questions to ask at some point, is like, you know, how was it to write? I mean, because there are a lot of questions I have about how it was to juggle all these personas. But juggling the Kevin one and the Stockroach one in a written form is interesting. So moving forward to Morgan's favorite poem in the entire collection.
It's maybe not the my favorite in the whole, but it is definitely the funniest or the weirdest. It's about bananas.
I mean, it's incredible. When you said that this went in there, I was like, yep, all right. No disagreements there. It's going in. So would you like to be the one to read this one?
Sure. I do not read poetry, so
that's all right.
My French, which sonnets would not work in anyway.
I'm not good unless I practice anyway, so.
So if riches were bananas, I would eat bananas every day, rich as I am. I'd sit each morn upon my breakfast seat and feast upon the fruits with toast and jam. But if love were bananas, then I would be too hungry to even get along. I'd envy all the people who have good bananas every day, like Donkey Kong. Bananas in real life are nothing more than yellow fruit. They do not represent romance or even wealth by metaphor. So here it is, more directly, what I meant. If it would mean you'd fall in love with me, I'd give up fruit for all eternity.
Oh,
it's like
bananas.
And then
it's actually really sweet. It's like a love poem to bananas.
The footnote. Donkey Kong is, as I learned through my research, a reference to a muscular ape-like character from the Super Mario Bros. Franchise of video games and related media. Bananas comprise a recurring motif in many of DK's platformer-style video games. I'm not sure it could count as a motif, but whatever. I am constantly consistently awed by TSR's ability to include references to both classical literature and contemporary youth culture in a single volume. In a way, this collection of sonnets itself is a kind of platformer, leaping from illusion to illusion in nimble literary style. I'm very partial to that last bit there. I think it's kind of fun to think of poems as platformers. There's a playfulness there that is nice.
It makes sense in general because you are going, like, the sonnets are separated, but on they're the same level, but just every poem is a platform in the same theme.
I'm like, yeah. It's a very poetic. It's very similar. We read a book recently about what was it called? It's clay, something data and dirt. Code and clay, data and dirt. I can't remember the author, what her name is, Shannon something, but we read it in Jocelyn's class, and there's a part in it where the author is laying out this argument that, you know, a library is really a book full of books, which is you know, we went back and forth on this because the author means it very literally, and that's very difficult to kind of process or work with in any meaningful way.
Yeah.
So, but like as a metaphor, it is a very poetic metaphor to lay out. Well, actually, all of these, you know, it's in this collection particularly in a very literal way. The collection of poetry is the last poem in the collection, you know. So I like the platformer metaphor on that level, even though I think it's making fun of those kinds of conceits.
Yeah, I definitely like. Throughout the rest of he struggles to find a meaning or like make a meaningful understanding of the poetry or something like that. But you can kind of start seeing like the editor Kevin Y being like, this is what he means and this poem is serious, and then as it goes he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And we'll see that as we go continuing onwards.
Yeah, you're a Nintendo person, David, and there's not one but two references to Nintendo in here.
Yes, I do love Nintendo. Well, it's also really funny because like it's also very like base knowledge. You know what I mean? Like it's not something that people are gonna be like. You know what I mean? It's just like
it definitely sounded like, oh, you're wearing a Metallica shirt? Tell me all of Metallica's albums. Like that's what it sounded like. What you just did.
Yeah, it is. But what I'm saying is like it's used effectively, right? Because then you know it's that this character like doesn't really have deep knowledge of these things, right? He's just like, oh yeah, DK eats bananas.
DK eats bananas. But
like if you walked by Hot Topic and just saw like a little DK shirt there, right, you would know that. So right, it's like the lore of the ARG, right? It helps us see that the character like is still this like teenage boy who doesn't actually know really all that much about the world, including video game references, right?
Or at least Nintendo references. Maybe he knows a lot about Halo. We don't know.
Who knows?
It's worth pointing out, I think, from like a poetic form perspective, that this poem in particular is full of a lot of pure rhymes.
It is.
Eat and seat is pure. Am and jam is pure. I think the only impure rhyme is wood and good. And it's only impure technically. It's sonically fine. But like if you look at the words on the page, you can tell, okay, the OULD is ever so slightly different than the OOD. For those of you who don't know in chat, a pure rhyme is a rhyme where the syllable vowels match exactly. But an impure rhyme is any time that you have some sort of, or rather, I should say, a slant rhyme is any time you have those syllables out of alignment, and that could mean like maybe the syllable count is different. That can mean maybe the sound is different. It really just depends. So but I think like my experience with the particular collection is that there are more slant rhymes as the collection continues, which is also really interesting because it suggests, again, growth of the poet over the course of the collection, realizing that no, I don't actually have to follow these rules quite as strictly as I set myself out to.
Well, is it the growth of the poet though?
Fair enough. It could be the rushing, the continued rushing of new poems.
No, what I'm saying is I don't think, this is what I was saying, I don't think T.S. Roach really wrote these.
Oh, you think, wait, hold on. So your reading is that Kevin is really the one who assembled all of these poems and he's just complimenting himself?
Because I don't know if as growth the editor, or just emboldening of the editor, because we talked about with Sonnet 8, maybe that's the turn. Is it Sonnet 6 or whatever that editors know, where he's like, I did all this work and T.S. Roach didn't notice, or this is what he meant. So now I'm going to take the liberties to do what the author wanted, just without any reins, because...
Well, he's definitely the stand-in for the form, right? Like, at the end of the day, and maybe that's where you're going, David, I don't know, but he's definitely the only person who's concerned between him and the Stockroach with every poem actually being a sonnet. Like, the Stockroach has just decided any poem he writes is a sonnet. Which is a funny thing, but also, like, a really interesting conceptual statement about genre.
Well, it also continues to point at the high schooler writing poetry. When I'm like, my poetry had no form. Literally, it had no form. It sounded cool. It was #shower thoughts, but like I wouldn't have called it like a haiku
Cower right there,
or a sonnet or something,
Mm-hmm.
But maybe he's just like has equated vague platitudes with poetry and poetry with sonnets. So everything he writes is a sonnet. Because I'd imagine someone might have done that. But I think it's kind of a mixture of both, where like the editor is forcing a form as well as having to decrypt or unencrypt the I almost called Night Roach a cryptid.
He's kind of a cryptid.
The cryptic messages he gets sent, he has to decode them and make something out of them.
Yeah, but also, and a lot of footnotes, especially as it goes on, a lot of it's like footnote 24 on page 19, if you want to show that. I mean, we're kind of scooching forward ahead, but this poem was slightly altered by the editor's note, me, and published in this form pending TSR's approval. He hasn't responded, but I have faith that he will before we print the second edition. Although I'm the one who assembled the lines into their final order, I must reiterate that TSR is responsible for their composition. I was only trying to honor what I assumed must have been his intentions.
Yeah.
So I'm like, who's the one really doing authorship here?
Yeah.
Well, and that's definitely being thrown. Like, authorship as a question is like, I mean, so two things. First of all, the other option, of course, when it comes to the point in the question of like the slant rhymes, is maybe it's the desperation of Kevin Y to try and make this look like it's rhyming at least.
Yes.
The other interesting piece. Hey, Eric Meme 007. Yes, a sonnet. Lots, 34 of them, in fact. The other part of it is that, of course, the ARG as a form is always caught up in questions of authorship, right? And so laying out a question of authorship between the editor and the actual Roach within the piece not only makes the persona confused, but it also like brings up that exact same question of who is really writing this piece, the fans or the maker. So
I was gonna lean into the ARG, Ren. I was gonna be like, these are sonnets written by T.S. Roach from YouTube famous YouTube channel.
Well, I didn't post that. That was David. Also, David's gone
I know.
now, so now all of our screen is fucked up. Hold on.
Wait, I'm down?
Oh, yep, you're down. And I can't fix
No,
you.
I think... Well, he's not down for me.
He's not down for me.
No.
What?
Ren, you ended the stream.
I didn't? What?
You did.
You did.
You ended the stream.
Oh, no, it must have ended. Something must have happened. No, it's still running on my end.
Close it and try again? Well, no, not the Twitch stream, the Discord stream.
Oh, shit. I wonder what happened there. My bad. Oh, yeah, let me fix that.
Yeah, you can see, they can still, the Twitch stream is still active.
That's weird. Discord stopped seeing Foxit. Ah, well, there we go.
Welcome.
It's fixed now. Sorry about that. We try our best not to have technical issues, but you've caught us right on a technical issue.
No,
Right.
it's all part of the ARG because the ARG is kind of about.
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's all intentional.
Issues.
Yeah.
It's
Technical
all
issues, and honestly, if we ever run something similar to this where it's kind of like, oh, it's somewhat doxing ourselves, or like we should like emulate their storytelling and like inadvertently show our Streamlabs and our Discord and
We could do some cool stuff with streaming in this format, I have to say. But yeah, no, the with this poem though, like the confused authorship is a really interesting point. And now you're making me wish I put Sonnet 6 in here, because it seems like Sonnet 6 is really important to that reading of this work.
I don't think like the beginning.
I was just gonna say Sonnet 6 might not be important, but Sonic 06 is.
Thank you, David.
So
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there. I want the audience to know.
It's
Very
important for the most important Game Grumps playthrough ever. The only one that I ever watched was the Sonic 06 playthrough.
So
But
the next
yeah,
one.
I feel like
Go ahead.
so this was 1 and 3. So these are kind of like, I feel like if we think about it fully constructed, like this is, we can imagine that this is Roach making these, because as the book goes on, Kevin reveals like, I had pretty direct connections with Roach, and then he just disappeared.
Yeah.
So, and then he just starts getting random things from.
So maybe
Roach.
these are more to be read more as
these-
like the Stockroach ones.
Yeah, like there's a convergence. There's like a supply and demand graph, except the supply and the demands are Kevin Y and T.S. Roach. So
That's such an
T.S. Roach
interesting.
authorship goes down and Kevin Y's goes up.
Yeah.
That's what I was kind of thinking as I was going throughout the thing, especially as the footnotes get longer and longer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's like
that.
also physically who's writing on the page. Physically who's taking up the most space in these pages.
What is it? Ownership is 9/10 of the law, or use is 9/10 of the law, or something like that. How much of the page is Kevin Y?
More reasons that I'm glad you guys are along, because there's things I take for granted as somebody who reads and writes a lot of poetry that you guys aren't going to take for granted. I had not thought about the size of the footnotes relative to the poems. That's a really interesting point. Also, thanks for following Eric Meme 007. Go on.
No, I was gonna say, but like for me, like because I'm already so like shaky on authorship anyways as like a conceptual tool, that like for me I'm already reading this thing with that in mind, partially because that's part of what the ARG is about too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I'm already coming into this being skeptical of what I'm gonna find in it.
Yeah.
Not skeptical in like that I'm gonna hate it, but skeptical just in like the sense like what is it trying to do in the context of like this game, right? And I think like the blurred authorship here is an important part of that, right? Where like even Stockroach himself can't escape the blurry authorship of what he's trying to do with everything.
I think that's an interesting way that you put it, because I kind of approached the piece similarly, where I was like, this is a thing made in the context of this ARG. And the whole time I'm reading it, I'm like, I have no idea if Kevin Y is an actual person, because it starts off as the footnotes are, hey, this is a Donkey Kong thing, or hey, this is like very professional editorial notes, and then it just kind of devolves. And by the end of it, like, okay, this is fully fictional.
And at the end, he's like, there are footnotes where he's like, I'm sorry. That's the entire footnote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I may, this, I mean, we'll get into it more, but this reminded me a lot of Beginner's Guide.
Yeah. That's a really good comparison.
Oh wait, no, I think I know Beginner's Guide.
That's like by the second game by the guy who made the Stanley Parable.
Yeah.
Stuart uses it a lot because it's a fucking good game. And actually,
Yes,
to answer this exact question, I think in general is to address
another
authorship.
Reddit. Yeah, and I think I had a very similar understanding of Beginner's Guide that I had to this book, which is someone going back and reading old poetry that they no longer have a connection to. They're like, I had feelings, but this is no longer me. So this is just feelings separate of my personality.
And Beginner's Guide's particularly interesting because on top of what it's talking about, there's also an abuse narrative running, And I think here, there is a similar thing going on, not an abuse narrative, but Kevin seems to become kind of confused about who he is over the course of dealing with this. And that's, that kind of like slippage presents a narrative alternative to just simply the authorship question. It becomes symbolic in some ways.
Yeah.
To push us along through the sonnets, I then selected, I believe number 14 was a selection from me. This particular one I grabbed because it really is probably the best. I think it's the only time we see the Stockroach, as much as we can understand it, of this being the Stockroach, directly addressing what the Night Roach actually feels like. And I think it's a really good read for that reason. So I don't know if one of you guys want to take it, or if I can take it. Your call.
David hasn't read a poetry, so maybe Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are 1,000 critters in my brain that waken in the deep part of a dream, tapping against my mind's eye's window pane, and when I rouse the morning after seem to settle down a bit, at least compared to how insane they acted in the night. At night, it's like I get the crazy squared, but the next day I guess that it's all right. Am I the only one who feels this way? There's gotta be a couple other dudes, at least, who can keep calm during the day, but then at night misplace a bunch of foods. One day if I get married, this will take explaining for my wife or husband's sake.
That's a thing.
I got rid of our
that's a thing.
And Morgan, you want to take the footnote this time?
In the interest of time, perhaps maybe we sum up or skim the footnotes.
That works. We can do that.
So he's talking about the great difficulty in collecting. I'll kind of read bits and pieces. Editing this collection together was piecing together complete poems from the multiple incomplete drafts in multiple documents from TSR, who kindly provided to him. This one, oh no, I have to pull up the actual cover so I can actually see what it says, because it's too small on my screen.
I'm sorry, I'm trying my best.
No, you're good.
I can look. I can do it if
you
want.
All right, there we go. No, so while this came from the aforementioned unfinished sonnets.x.
Oh.
Lines 2 and 4 were sent to me late last night and spelled like so, and that is the Night Roach. Had the waken in the after a seam. So in addition to fixing the spellings, he also had to change a pronoun, you in the second line to I, to make it work in the context of a different poem, or in the same poem, in this sonnet. So you consistently refers to beloved and I to the protagonist. Not sure why he would have changed the convention here, unless there is some other you to whom TSR has yet to introduce the reader. And that you is Night Roach.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Evie Ghost, for following. We really appreciate it. Yeah. So, I mean, I love this piece. This one would be maybe one of my favorite sonnets in the collection, just because it's fascinating to see him try to describe the feeling of the Night Roach. Like, the image of a ton of bugs moving around in your brain in some way feels like it might have influenced the moniker Roach in the first place.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, like something scuttling around.
Yeah.
Scuttlebug, literally.
A scoop mob. Sorry.
It also recalls that time he slept with a whole raw chicken.
That's, that's true. Also, I'm
important thing to remember that happened.
And then like the footnote, I think this kind of also shows the footnote of, hey, I had to take Night Roach blabbers and put it into the poem. And then the switching of pronouns. Now I don't know about poems. I feel like switching pronouns in poems in particular, it's really shifty. Like that's actually changing the meaning of the poem. So that kind of points back to that authorship argument that David was talking about, that I agree with.
I literally just in my English 101 class had a conversation with people about when they should and shouldn't use ambiguous pronouns, because there is a time where you want that. And this is a time where an ambiguous pronoun is really important to the poem, and the editor takes it out.
Yeah. Well, because that's the thing. Like, the editor's like, oh, I feel like throughout the thing, he goes like, I know Roach so well. Like, I know exactly what this poem is supposed to be. And I feel like that's a lot of misplaced concreteness.
Hey.
In the idea that, oh, I know this, I can do this. And I think he's a little too overconfident, because we know Roach, and we're like, no, the Roach would not want you to change those pronouns, or for the sake of like the story, we're like, no, that makes sense in the story to have those pronouns be weird. Yeah. But the editor, as the character, doesn't know that, but he thinks he knows that. And he's got the whole Kruger curve going on. Mm-hmm. Kruger's paradox or something like that?
What's that?
I don't know what Kruger's
It's where
is
you get really overconfident. Like, if you know, like, the more knowledge you know, the less you think you know. But people who don't know a lot are really overconfident. I believe it's the Kruger paradox.
Gotcha.
Not entirely sure. Let me look it up.
So yeah, I mean, it's
the Dunning-Kruger effect. That's what it's called. Continue.
Yeah, I was just gonna fill time in case we needed to with something I was gonna say. But my brain does not have a ton. I know David had something he wanted to say.
About the poem, or
or about the footnote, something.
What was I gonna say? Gosh. Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, this was one of the footnotes where I was like, ooh, he's changing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Oh yeah. I mean, how do you decipher? Like, I mean, I'm personally very interested in a version of this where somebody has gone back and changed everything to what the editor says they changed it from, and just reading it in the sonnet form with those kind of problems in there. Because it does something interesting to the text when somebody is not, strictly speaking, sitting there and going, well, everything has to be a Shakespearean sonnet, you know?
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons why maybe the editor has assumed that everything needed to be Shakespearean sonnets is because the first sonnet referenced Shakespeare.
I could see that. If they're like chronologically in the order he received them, which they appear to be.
It appears to be that way.
Yeah, that might be
he
the
goes,
assumption.
oh. And then the editor's like, oh, I know Roach so well. He wants everything to be a Shakespearean sonnet.
Right.
Because the first one he sent me was a Shakespearean sonnet. So.
Well, it's ironically another claim at legitimacy, right? Like claiming to be an investor, claiming that you know you're a billionaire, you have a ton of money, whatever else. Like, that's one kind of claim. But in the poetry world, like now, you know, in the actual contemporary poetry scene, do you get much out of pretending to be a Shakespearean? No. But like, would a kid who's read a ton of Shakespeare in class think that you might? Yeah.
Or if he thinks it's some, like, a lot of this stuff is talking about love and attraction and things.
Yeah.
Shakespeare is sold pretty hard in high school classes for being like the ultimate romantic poet. I'm being completely honest. Like, they're like,
no, I know you're right.
And like, he's kind of sold as, oh, he does beautiful poems. So it's like, if this kid's talking about love, that's probably why he gravitated towards Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But maybe,
definitely.
Yeah.
So another one.
If you look up sonnets, they might take you to a Shakespeare sonnet.
Oh, for sure.
Searching on Bing.com, getting there through Google, searching.
The best search engine, in fact. I learned that one somewhere. I can't imagine where. So this one was recommended to us by Tromboner. Or Tromboomer. I did it again. I should just stop calling it out at some point and just ride with it.
I just go with it. I just go Trombooner. I just kind of say Tromboner all the time.
This one this one was recommended to us. And so Sonnet 18. One. Here we go. Just how much would I pay to reconvene upon that grassy hill where you and I once sat and talked? And almost did I lean upon your muscled shoulder with a sigh. The hillside where this question did you pose. So anyway, do you like anyone? I mean, like them, like them, I mean. Sorry, my brain is dumb. And my heart rose to think our love could finally be begun. But then, for reasons that I still do not know, I couldn't bring myself to say a word. You smiled at me and said, I get it, bro. as if in silence some secret you heard. If I could go back and redo that day, what would I find the courage then to say? And then the footnote here basically says this. This is a really, really precise footnote. It's also worth mentioning that it is currently 4:36 a.m., the exact time at which I received the first late night missive from TSR. I'm not normally a night owl, but I'm not normally a night owl, to use that terribly gauche phrase. But receiving TSR's wee hours iambic dispatches was so exhilarating that at a certain point I found myself lying awake in bed in anticipation, wondering if tonight could be the night that I receive another one. And then, he goes on. But you get the idea. So Kevin has been staying awake to try and receive more and more of TSR's stuff. This poem was selected, I think, because of its relationship with Ashley, but it also has interesting kind of subtext.
I mean, it does kind of... He's leaning on a muscled shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of read into it a more, like, homosexual reading to it. Like, I get it, bro. Like, I'm just thinking, like, he's leaning, like, for me, my brain kind of equated it to Michael, his bully. Like, at some point, Michael was like, do you like anyone? Like, and Roach was just, like, silent. And then he's like, oh, okay. I get it. I get it. Like, that's I got you. Or it's either a, oh, I get it. Like, you don't like me. Or I get it as in, like, we have a unspoken love or something.
I read
that's how I read it.
And I read this as him with Ashley, because he says very early on that Ashley is like ripped or some shit.
Oh yeah.
And but what's funny about that reading, and it's like, this is why I think both of those work, is that she says, do you like anyone? He can't respond. She says, I get it. What is there for her to get? Clearly it's not clearly whatever she thinks he's thinking is not what he's thinking. My take on it is, we know that she is, a lesbian who's just into women, as far as we know. Could be bisexual, but it's not really laid out. Or could be into, I guess, gender non-conforming people, but that's also not laid out. So is the I get it, oh, I get it, you're gay too. Which is
I think that's
more
what,
fun.
that's what it was. Okay. That's what I was getting.
I
Three
love
different readings of one poem.
Yeah, well, I mean, when the pronouns are ambiguous, and somebody's muscly. Because Michael is also described as being, like, in this collection, as somebody who hits the gym constantly. So it could be Michael.
Could be Michael. Well, it's also like, there are several poems that are directed to a man, it seems.
Yes.
They're talking about being in locker rooms together, so...
And those are very homoerotic, I think.
Those are very... That's kind of leans into my reading of this. Also, like the previous poem that we read, talked about, I'll have to explain it to my wife or husband so they can understand. So...
Yeah, TSR is very clearly bisexual, at the least. And, I think it's really interesting that that Ashley. This also, I think, if his description of Ashley's words is accurate, which is its own question, then this is really the first chance we get to hear, like, what Ashley's character and voice might actually be like, outside of that last episode where we hear her speak a little bit,
Well, we did see some text messages from her, and boy, her text messages were definitely like Valley Girl-ish. Like, hey boo, how's it going? Hey J Gills. Like, very much that kind of idea. So my brain, like, oh, so anyway, do you like anyone? Like them? I can imagine the person who sent the text messages would also be the same sort of feeling as someone who said that phrase.
I can see that.
So I can, but we never found Ashley's poetry page. So
we didn't. Know. We don't know. We've never found Ashley's DeviantArt. We've never found her poetry page. So add that to the list of shit to put in a cap maybe later.
Well, if you've never found it, could it be possible that it just doesn't exist? Is that the bounds? Have we found the bounds, the invisible walls of this ARG?
Well, we'll never really know. I mean, we might know, but we won't know from the game itself. We'll know from the creator if the creator ever chooses to say, or if we ever find it. And that's part of the magic of the game, right?
So, like, this footnote kind of highlights Kevin going insane slightly, he's starting to get a little bit obsessive over this, just a little bit. And that's kind of like the story that when I read it, I saw that as the story of Kevin, as him going slightly mad, and just kind of going off the deep end, trying to make this poetry collection out of Night Roach ramblings. But now that I'm thinking about it, now it kind of, I don't know how that connects or meshes gears in with the idea of authorship. Maybe he's like obsessing over TSR, like this weird parasocial relationship of like, I am TSR, because that can happen. That has happened with like parasociality things where it's like, I am this person now.
It's definitely parasocial, whatever the fuck is going on with it. Yeah, I absolutely, yeah.
Sleeping TSR is sending him gibbers, and Kevin's like, oh, Senpai noticed me. I shall write a poem with you.
No, don't remind me of a student who wrote that.
Wait, hold on.
I shouldn't say wrote that.
What the
There was a
fuck?
student who wore a shirt that said Senpai didn't notice me, and I'm like, I need this to not exist in my life.
Oh my god.
I need this to not happen anymore.
You wear that to an anime convention. You don't wear that to a class where there is a literal senpai, aka the teacher.
And you know what? It's like whatever yucks your yum, as they say, you know. But
don't bring it to my college classroom.
Just don't
please.
show me.
Also,
anyway, we only have 20 minutes left, so we gotta get going.
So we don't do. Also, notably at the top of this poem, we don't do how much I wish. It's how much I would pay. You know, or would I pay?
The money comes back into it.
Money as this kind of, I mean, money takes on so many different meanings to the Stockroach. You know, it's really hard to track down. I don't think there's one metaphor that works for how money works in Stockroach. I really think like it's this multifaceted representation of so much of him that it's really hard to get at it.
Which kind of makes me think that he's like newly poor in a way. Because he has a lot of things, like he has a piano, he has a Mac, but when those break, he goes, I can't replace this laptop. It was lovingly donated to me by Snakeskin. Like, I broke my phone and I had to put it in rice. So it makes me think that he's a newly destitute, I guess you could say, or like newly poor, or just realizing how poor he is. Maybe I don't know, but like that's kind of why money might take on such meaning for him, is that he had money, or he realizes he had money and now he doesn't have money, so that money becomes the source of I need it.
Maybe that's why we read so much of the recession into this too, is
that
the people having money who suddenly now don't, kind of coming through,
and how much the kids see that, because like this is how we figured out that we're the youngest in our audience. Or like a majority of them, because we were like, well, our parents kind of hid the recession in a way. At least my parents did. I heard it mentioned once or twice, but it was never like a mom and dad are poor now sort of idea.
Yeah.
So
I feel like this is kind of where it comes in.
So pushing us along, because David is very concerned about time.
We only got 2 more poems.
I just want to make sure we
can
here,
get to everything. We definitely don't have to do all of them. So we've got number 19, which is, of course, that. And then after that, we have number 20. I have 21 and 23 as well. Let's do 19 first, though. So number 19, who would like to cover it? Would anybody like to read it?
I can read it. Why not?
Yeah.
So I wrote a poem about you yesterday, but not this poem, a different one. I mean, it started with just how much I would pay. And then the next words were to reconvene. I'm thinking that poem would be a good example of my writing if I ever decide to show you. I hope that you would think that it's nice and that the rhymes are clever. And by the way, in case you ever read it, these poems and wonder if they say you, that you is really you yourself. I need to just confess that, oh my god, these page breaks, line breaks are catching me. Confess that, yeah, it's true. You are the you that all of these poems mention. I guess I'll see you later. Detention.
Which is a really fun rhyme, by the way. I love the 2-syllable pure. That's That's fun.
Yeah.
Some like faux rhyme with the true and you there. It's fun. All right. Anyway, slants and all.
Slants and all.
It's an Ars Poetica about the poem we just read. Which I love.
Very self-referential. And it gives us some more clues as to who the you is.
Right.
Because, like, Michael, so this kind of leans into my Michael reading. Because Michael's his bully. So if they got into a fight and they got both sent to detention,
Yeah?
Because, like, he doesn't, unless him and Ashley are just,
Ashley's a troublemaker.
if they're both troublemakers. But it makes sense, like, if, like, Michael, because why does he talk to his bully?
Well, no, yeah, you're right, because he keeps doing
bully
it.
was his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
We established that they were best friends.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, baby cry. You're just gonna have to deal with it. So like, makes sense that maybe the Michael he's talking about, this is talking about Michael, the you is Michael.
Mm-hmm.
/ Night Roach when you is Night Roach, because that happens.
This is like a classic in like one of the ways this is masterfully written as like a youth writing poetry that's believable is its overuse of ambiguous pronouns, right? Like this is the creme de la creme of that, getting into that persona using that particular device. The you is really you, yourself. I need to just confess, yeah, it is, it's true, right? Not only is like, the you confused, but the it is also confused. So you're stuck in this weird moment where you're like, well, fuck, I don't actually know what any of this is about. It's genuine, but what the fuck?
It's like it's high school poetry when you're reading it. Like if you go back and read it, you're like, oh yeah, I was talking about my crush X. You're like, that's what you meant at that time. But if you read this you from a different year, that means someone else.
That means someone else, yeah.
Because you don't want, when someone reads your poetry, to understand who you're talking about.
Right.
In case your crush actually gets a hold of your poetry somehow. It's a very things that go through your mind when you're writing poetry as a high schooler.
Oh, yeah. And in the footnote, we also get, Kevin being almost divulging like what things he wants to do with his life and like really like kind of coming out. I shouldn't say coming out. I should say opening up to the reader. Yeah.
Blossoming.
Blossoming. Yes. Yeah. So, you have that kind of opening of Kevin to us, but in doing that, I mean, it really does. It almost feels like now we're talking to another Stockroach. I'm not going to talk about this, but I am going to talk about this. In a poem where somebody says, I'm not going to talk about this, but I am going to talk about this, Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which I guess again goes to your idea, David, that the authorship is confused, right? You have a footnote and a poem that are doing functionally the same. They're playing the same game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything's messed up.
Mm-hmm. Well, so the last couple ones I grabbed were 21 and 23. These two are very late in the collection, all things considered. And you can really see what David was talking about the footnotes becoming increasingly large here. Especially with this poem. I mean, like that's over half the page.
These footnotes rival like law review footnotes.
So, David, would you like to take this one?
Sure. All right.
It's 21 if you want to look at it.
I want to get it out of my book. Yeah.
Yeah. It's much more fun to read it out of the print copy, I think.
Yeah. There was a time not long ago when he and I arrived in class before the rest. We talked like it was almost normal. We discussed both being nervous for a test. We normally don't talk except at gym. He lives in hours out of time and we're a part of you and you a part of him. Would steal my towel and sometimes underwear. The song of him to listen to the song, because he lives only because of you, to listen and carry him along. And one time in preschool, we both ate glue. Will we one day be friends like this again? Perhaps the day will come when we're old men.
Yeah. So I will say that there are two footnotes here I want to bring up. First is footnote 30. But what was most maddening about all of this was the feeling of only ever knowing one small part of a person. When TS and I were initially put in contact and I received the first few poems, I felt an immense closeness with a person I had never met. And then footnote 31. And basically, this is the tenor of this entire footnote. Is this, one, a concern for like, am I assuming too many things about these pronouns? And the rest of it, this really intense, like, longing to know this person, And there is like a really interesting beat of poetic theory that runs here, right? This idea that when one reads a piece of poetry, you really open yourself up to a meditation with the poet or a meditation with everybody else who's ever read those poems. And I'm not sure how much I put stock in that idea, but it's certainly something that it feels like Kevin is falling into,
I agree with Ash Black that says the subtext just became text. I'm like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Also, yes, the sharing underwear.
Yeah.
Or the stealing of underwear.
The stealing of underwear, yeah. That is a very intimate activity. My God.
Hey, in preschool, they both take glue.
That's true. Also,
you
can...
Something you never forget.
Go ahead, David.
Do you think the thrust of this book is supporting this relationship or this lack of relationship between the two?
Like a good thing, or are we talking about value assessment?
Are we as a reader supposed to with these footnotes, are we supposed to be like, oh yeah, like these guys, like what kind of relationship are we supposed to surmise out of this? What does the text itself want us to believe about this relationship?
For Kevin?
What relationship? The Kevin relationship or the TSR
the Kevin
relationship?
Okay. I mean, the relationship with Kevin lands him in a position where he stops being in contact with the person he's working with, and they have to go to his home and take care of him. I'm to assume that this level of parasociality is not good, according to the book, if that's what you mean.
Yes,
that's my take. I don't know where Morgan's at with it.
I agree that the book kind of, it's tongue-in-cheek. Like, the person who's writing Kevin is not actually Kevin. So he's making a point of people who like put a little bit too much stock into reading poetry and getting really close to an author, or like, oh yeah, I know what this person is meaning, I totally relate, and kind of falling down the wormhole, the rabbit hole, so to speak. That's not healthy. I think the book takes a stance on this isn't healthy, because to the point of the afterword going, I had to go get him from his house.
Is this then a critique we're supposed to transfer over to our own consumption of this ARG then?
Oh, yeah,
it's a very meta ARG, so I think that's completely possible.
I'm not saying that's what it's doing, right? But what I'm saying is like there's an interesting parallel between editing poetry and like feeling close in connection to someone who just like threw their random stuff to you, and doing an ARG like this and feeling a close connection to this other fictional character, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like this is all pointless and nobody should have any social relationships or anything like that. But it's just an interesting parallel where like you're reading someone who's engaging with Stockroach in the way that we've just spent the past however many months engaging with Stockroach. And there is no actual relationship there. No actual one. But we can then flip it on its head and say, right, that like just because it's not quote unquote real doesn't mean that we shouldn't take stock and have something beneficial with it. Take Stockroach in it, right? But maybe the obsession, I don't think we've gotten to that level. But like an obsession with a fictionalized person, even if they're a real person, but they're like kind of fictionalized in how we construct them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's the same kind of, if I were to do my postmodernist critique here, right, a fictional character in a story is the same thing as the fictional story we tell ourselves about real people.
Well, that connection is made immediately in the beginning, in the foreword.
Yeah,
right?
I was just about to mention it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very postmodern in that respect. I think that, you know, when it comes down to it, I do think there's some critique going on here as far as like how much we should assume we understand the Stockroach from what we've seen. But I think mainly that's because like the videos are very confessional, and because it almost accidentally so. But I mean, like, anytime that's the case, it's hard to look at the piece and go, I understand this person, I've seen their life, you know? But even in that confession, you're still only seeing a few seconds here and there of what this person is going through. To speak plainly to it, right? We don't really understand fully what happened with his dad. We're never going to fully understand that. And yet, like, there's a desire to get to that truth from the materials we have. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there is something poignant there for sure. Also, poetry about obsession, perfect. Absolutely no changes. Don't change it. Love obsession. All poets are obsessive people.
I think, but like this poem in particular is definitely talking about Michael, or insert guy crush here.
Yeah.
Presumably Michael.
And this, I think I slipped a few episodes back and was like, and told you about this poem before you read it. But yeah, it's very, like, also it is one of the poems where you can clearly see where Kevin has added Night Roach lines.
Yes.
It's so obvious. Absolutely. Yeah. And they don't work.
Oh, he lives in hours of time and where.
Yeah.
Like, there. Song of him to listen to the song,
because he lives only because of you, right? So that's like, you can read it in the context of this poem as being this really deep emotional connection between these two men, you know, or maybe something very directly erotic, or you can read it as, oh no, this is the Night Roach, right? But I mean, there is something about, well, I'll leave it there.
Ambiguous pronouns have led to multiple he's being conflated.
Yes.
Because as like the ARG goes, we kind of see that Night Roach is concerned with a memory of a male figure, presumably in a hospital or something.
Right.
So and we assumed that it was his dad. Maybe it's his best friend. But like, if it is his dad, then that he is the wrong he. The lines where he talk about like, oh, he only lives because of you. It's like, well, that. It's probably about his dad. Maybe.
Yeah. or the he is in the he is the Night Roach, right? The he of the Night Roach only lives because of you. So it's
yes.
But now we're becoming Bill Clinton. So at that point, I'm going to scroll to the last sonnet in the set.
Do we know saxophone?
We do know saxophone. This is number 23, and I think. David, did you read the last one, or Morgan read the last one?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, so I will finish this out.
Oh, you can finish it out. Yeah.
The beauty of a cloudless sky, the brightness of a radiant full moon, the outfit on a fashionable guy are nothing next to you for whom I swoon. Remember the song to listen to, and I will hold you safely until between the eyelids that divide into you, if you let them, one day will forget completely. You cannot implant things that you never should have seen and known. The sky beckons you from dreaming, but you can't too soon the truth of all that is to own. The beauteousness that you have is such that even other beautiful things can't touch. Almost all of that is Night Roach lines that he's thrown in. Almost all of it. It really, like, as much as the metaphor is the channel as the book, this is like the poem that really throws that in. I love that the fashionable guy line is great. The elision in beautiful is hilarious because it makes absolutely, like, it makes sense from a metrical standpoint, but you would never elide like that. Like, that's not a good elision. You would not take an important vowel out of a word. It breaks my brain, but it's great.
But it's also like something that could have been like the editor.
Oh, it's almost certain that's an editor move.
Yeah, but like, because you can tell it's not how the Roach has ever really written with like glottal, like the removing of a vowel with a inverted comma.
The
apostrophe.
the only the only elision that the roach has ostensibly made is mourning to mourn. But when he did that, he didn't have the mark for the elision. So it's not an elision in the Shakespearean sense. This feels to me like the editor inserting a Shakespeareanism in an almost hilariously backwards way to try and get that line to work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, again, looking at the footnotes here, okay, I'm back, sorry for disappearing, which is a weird chronology to it, right? Like, now the footnotes are in real time. I'm fine now. I took a little walk around my apartment and had a glass of water. I feel much better, except that stubbing my toe. It always takes a few minutes for my eyes to adjust to the darkness after I've been looking at this document for too long. Sorry, I'm supposed to mention the lines noted in notes 36 through 43 were all late night editions. So, yeah.
So, this has gone to become like the Shining sort of thing, where he's just like going mad and like he's live journaling his madness. That's what he's doing.
It's very House of
tweeting.
Leaves. It was almost directly very House of Leaves. But the difference is, instead of going mad about the thing that you're reading driving you insane because it's evil or horrible or unimaginable, here it's just like almost seeing too much of yourself in the person you're editing,
Yeah, or like Black Swanning it, like he's becoming the Night Roach after having dealt with the Night Roach so much.
Yeah, or again, I think that critical distance is important, right? He's becoming the thing he perceives the other person to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? He's not becoming the thing itself, right? And that separation is absolutely vital for narratives like this, because the only way you can be someone else is if you have that separation with them, basically.
Yeah.
Right? To become another, you have to realize that they're inherently different from you. Derrida. Maybe I'm becoming Derrida.
Maybe you're becoming Derrida.
But I think that separation is important.
Would you like to live tweet your becoming of Derrida? Like
I can do that.
Was it mentioned that there was... Sorry, you got it. Go ahead, Morgan. Read it.
Was it mentioned that there was a Kevin Y poem in Jeremy's birthday website?
Yes. We mentioned it way back when we actually looked at the birthday website. Morgan, you weren't there for this, but there's a website called the Money Grub Birthday Club that you could pay to get into. And there's a Kevin Y short story in that piece. And do you know what the short story is about? It's about a guy becoming the universe.
So he was predisposed to going crazy.
Well, it's like, it's fascinating that it would be in there, Trom, but even on top of that, like, it is, I wonder if we're supposed to narratively understand it as being written during this moment in Kevin's life, where he's identifying so closely with this person that the balance between their selves seems to collide for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And given the temporality of the Stockroach, like the timelines and things, I can imagine that would make sense. He was, right? Who wrote the story while he was maybe recovering, or like before or during.
Well, and how else would it get onto the Money Grub Birthday Club? I guess he must have sent it to the Stockroach somehow.
I would not put it past I'm going to send it to the Stockroach, my senpai, the Stockroach. I'm going to send him a short story. And then Stockroach just putting it on the website, being like, "Oh wow, a fan sent me this cool story."
Well, I think you could actually submit stories to the archives as well. So it's also possible that he paid for the Money Grub Birthday Club, and then submitted the story himself, which is also just like its own way the same thing. But yeah, I mean, this is a vertical slice of 34 sonnets, I would say. I think this fairly well covers the gist of what goes on in the text. We've read through a couple sonnets ourselves. We've talked a little bit about their structure. Again, I highly recommend this book. Don't go into it expecting to get like if you're going into it thinking it's like a poetry anthology that you would buy from like Grey Wolf Press or something, don't. But if you're going into this thinking it's like an amazing cap off to the series and an amazing piece of metafiction, yes, go in, read this piece. It is genuinely great.
I would say if you like metafiction, this is definitely for you.
Yeah. It's not that hard. How long did it take you to go through it, by the way, David? It took me like less than...
hour and a half at most.
Hour and a half at most.
So I think it took me like skimming and like looking at things like maybe 30 minutes for a nice skim, like another like hour to like an actual hour to actually read it.
To read it, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
what is metafiction?
fiction.
What is the Ludic Society?
So Eric Meme 007, the Ludic Society is a show on Serious Play, which is a group of digital cultures researchers at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. But the Ludic Society is specifically a show that covers ARGs, unfiction, AR, VR games, whatever we feel like covering that is reasonably pervasive. Usually alternate reality games right now, but in the future I'd love to do some VR stuff as well.
And ARGs are kind of, sort of, in practice, kind of like a scavenger hunt through the internet to build a narrative for yourself.
Yeah.
In the way that the authors wish you to have it, and typically they come in they're called alternate reality games because typically what you're looking at and what you're scavenging hunting are pieces that claim to be real.
Yeah. The name, I could tell you about the history of the name, but I'll save that for now. Metafiction specifically are books, games, whatever medium that is specifically, basically, there's like a complicated way of describing it, but they're making direct commentary on being a game or being a book by confusing things like authorship, using the physicality or like the shape of whatever they are to like describe themselves. It's like a game that tells you, like Doki Doki Literature Club, if you played that, where it's writing files into your computer that you have to go click on that tell you about the games. Then you go. That's kind of metafictional. This book, the confusion between the editor and the Roach himself and the conversation that's going on there, that's metafiction. It's more complicated than that, and like describing metafiction is difficult, but that's like a kind of a quick digest. Anything you guys would add to that?
I kind of see it as a fiction or like a story that seeks to critique the format within the format. Yeah, fiction on the nature of fiction. So someone writing, like, I don't know, everyone says, like, Deadpool, oh, Deadpool's so meta. He kind of is, because he's a comic book character critiquing the fact that he is a comic book character, in a way. So that is, in a way, metafiction. I don't think it's, like, actual, like, serious metafiction, but it kind of is.
Yeah, that's more like breaking the fourth wall, right?
Breaking the fourth
wall. Whereas metafiction break the fourth wall, which comes from like stage plays, right? You're breaking the wall between you and the audience, which is the fourth wall. Or, camera sets, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it comes from theater first.
Right. But metafiction generally is less interested in breaking the fourth wall as like as something to stick out to the audience, right? So like a lot of plays will like have a fourth wall moment, like
pause for audience effect.
Yeah. So like the audience then has like responds to that specific moment, and it like is inherently separate from most other things happening, right? And that's why it's so effective, because it's so different. Metafiction is more about like maintaining that fourth wall break throughout it, and exploring what can be done with like a sustained fourth wall break, I would say.
And to grab your next question, why discuss the Sonnets? So this is the epilogue to a alternate reality game called the Stockroach. This collection of sonnets is written by the character, the Stockroach, and this is kind of the last moment of that game. And so we're talking about these sonnets in connection to the rest of the series, but also how the editor is interacting with like the process of putting these sonnets together is what we're trying to do. If you haven't seen the series, which it sounds like you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's really, really, really good if you want to watch a 16-year-old pretend to be a 30-year-old investor.
Yeah, so the Stockroach, you can kind of start your own journey if you go to the Vehemence Discord. Start your journey there. Or we covered it pretty decently extensively, and it's on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
So a bot will eventually pop up and say, "This is our YouTube channel," and it's under Ludic Society /ARGs.
Yeah, if you
along
don't
with
mind
our other
commentary.
previous. Yeah.
I'm pretty funny.
Yes, you are, David. You're the shining star.
David's like, I don't know about you,
so hungry.
losers.
I need to eat this sandwich right now.
I'm savage. Is that why you're so savage? You need to eat a Snickers?
Yes, I need my peanut butter sandwich. I'm tired. Okay.
And thanks for tuning in. But before we end before we end the stream off, I want to take a few minutes and just ask you guys. Well, we've done it. We've completed the Stockroach. How do you feel? Like, what reading do you come away from this from? What is this? Does this matter? How does this matter to you? Or it doesn't? You know?
No.
I think it's an interesting look at how, I don't know, I can kind of like heavily relate to the Roach in a way of being a lost high schooler and like wanting some way to express or some way to, he has a lot more schism in his personality that I didn't have, but I can kind of understand a lot of the issues, crushes, poetry, etc., etc. So like me looking, it kind of is a window back into that mindset in a way, be like, okay, well, how would I as a teenager today express myself? Would I make a YouTube channel and attempting to be like, how would my internet persona be if I was that lost high schooler in 2020 compared to the lost high school in 2012? So
Totally. I like it because I like I mean, all the high school stuff is there, obviously, and it's great. I also like how it just plays with form with all of the genres that it's engaging in. And I think that's interesting to me as someone who wants to research digital practices and digital communities and practices. Like that for me is really interesting, how it's engaging with those things, right? And I think that's where ARGs really are fruitful in thinking about how digital culture right now is engaging with these ideas.
yeah, and definitely the way that it can tell stories through the medium of these platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things that, for me, one is that I think I also feel a really deep connection to the character in terms of like thinking back to where I was. There are things that don't track, but I mean, like, I had a really rough time with my mental health in high school, and while, you know, I have been diagnosed with a dissociative disorder. Specifically at this point, I think it all wraps up into my PTSD, but there was a moment in high school where I think I had something akin to like a psychological break and like had something like dissociative identity disorder. And so reading that from the perspective of a high schooler, somebody who's going through trying to jostle with their sexuality, through jostling with all this other stuff, it really resonates with me on that level from the character. Also, there's something immensely cathartic about looking at someone's work and then thinking about where your art was at that time in your life and seeing the same sort of like mistakes and fuck ups, and like there's almost like a gesture to saying like it's okay, you know? It's okay to grow through this, to fail at it, to not make good or technically good stuff. It's still meaningful out there, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Which is not like, I think like I can't detach the personal from my reading of it enough to like talk about the medium in the end of all this, but it is saying really interesting things about the medium and digital culture as well. Also, hello Bustamove 200, welcome to the very end of our Stockroach coverage.
Yes, we're literally like wrapping up.
Yeah,
it's funny.
It's really nice. I think the last time I had been seen by a piece of media in this particular way was when I was going through Marble Hornets the first time. So it's a nice romp back through that part of like why I do this stuff, you know, why I play these games, and you know.
Totally, right? I think that's really interesting. I think it's great that you have that connection with it, right? And I think it's interesting how, again, I'm not saying this is you, right? But it's interesting how obsession is kind of like a theme in it. You know what I mean? Like when so many people can identify with it, but it's kind of, I think one of the things it's exploring is like when does like identifying with and enjoying and really identifying with an object or a subject, right? In like as a love interest, right? how, like, where's that line between like identifying with and obsessing with, right? And I think it's great that you're saying like this is something that you identify with, right? And that you feel like speaks to experiences you've had with either your mental health, right, or experiences elsewhere, um, right? And I think like having us three, where it's like you're like can identify more closely with it, whereas like maybe Morgan and I can't. It's a good way of us like exploring that same theme, if that makes any sense, right? Of like obsession. Again, Ren's not obsessive with it,
God, no.
right?
I am very obsessive, but I'm not obsessed with this.
Yeah, right. But it's interesting that the ambivalence, right, versus like the deep identification, right, and all those different engagement with the text, I think is something that this explores as well, which is also a big part of digital culture,
Yeah.
right? The different modes or investment in things like this.
I can't think of a better place to end, honestly. Thank you for following Bust-a-Move 200. You have a great name, by the way. I can't think of a better place to end our coverage than right there. First of all, I just want to say thank you guys again for coming along. I know I did my big thank you last time, but I just want to say it's been great to have you, David, and Morgan co-hosting this, and I really hope we can keep with new coverage, bringing on more ARGs and doing this sort of stuff more. Thank you so much to everybody who has joined us over the course of the last like 7 or 8 videos going through this, especially to Tron Boomer Knuckles and Mediocre and the people at Vehemence, to Groovy Lobster, who's been here since the very beginning of this stream. Yeah, I think those are the main people who have been here every episode of the way, but it's super appreciated that you guys have been coming through with this. Which brings us to the last bit where I wanted to make some major announcements. First of all, December 4th, save the day. We'll figure out the time. We're still working on it. We will be doing a live Q&A session with the Stockroach creator, Kevin. That is Kevin. Kevin is his name. So we are...
Kevin Y is not his name, though.
I'm not going to obviously disclose his last name on stream.
Yep.
But Kevin, we're having a conversation with the creator on December 4th or at some point in time. That conversation, you'll be able to participate ahead of time by sending us the questions you want to ask in the Vehemence Discord server. The Q&A form should be out tomorrow, so that'll be awesome. We will also be bringing our own questions to the stream, and you can also ask questions live, and we will curate them and bring them on. I don't want to say anything else about the stream. There are a bunch of secret hidden things that I think are really exciting, but Kevin wants to make a really cool announcement on his own, so I'm gonna let him blow everybody's pants off and just tell you guys to save the date for now. As for the other announcement that I wanted to make, we're done with Stockroach, obviously, which means we've got to move forward. We're sharks in the water. We got to keep swimming. And so next time you guys come on and watch us, David will be gone because it's Thanksgiving week. I don't know if Morgan will be here or not. I might be solo streaming, or I might be with Morgan.
Perhaps it might be a good idea to do a small break.
Yeah. Well, I like to do the solo streams over even when you guys aren't around sometimes. I'll probably be doing something, but it won't be ARG related. It'll be either unfiction related or it will be, maybe an interview with somebody else, if I can get that sort of thing pulled off. But after we finish our Stockroach interview, we will be going into prep mode for 2 to 3 weeks and getting ready to cover the Jaduzable ARG. Also known colloquially as Ben Drowned. That's right, we're gonna cover the entirety of the 8 years of the main Ben Drowned ARG on stream. How the fuck we're gonna do that? I have no idea, but that's why we're gonna take 2 or 3 weeks off and do the research before we get into it. Over the course of that there are 3 main movements in the Jaduzable ARG, and because of that, I'm hoping to schedule 3 distinct interviews over the course of that coverage with different people who have different relationships to the whole thing. So, and that was recommended to us by Circle Hunter, the Jaduzable wiki owner, and so hopefully we will also be coordinating somewhat with the Within Hubris Discord server to bring you that, who are also coordinating with the Vehemence Discord server, because of course they are. So that's all the fun updates about the show. So tune in if you really like creepypasta, huh?
And I was gonna say, and we're doing crossover.
Oh yeah, right. Of course.
Serious
My
Play, we're doing
bad.
a crossover within Serious Play itself.
Yeah.
I still am tamping down an actual time for it, but as Ren and the Ludic Society go through Deducible, we're also going to be playing Majora's Mask, and I'm thinking I want to do Majora's Mask Randomizer, as long as we're talking about fan content. We're going to play Majora's Mask on my show called Fan Game Follies. So we're gonna do this double-edged sword, double-edged master
The double
sword.
feature. Yeah, the double-edged master sword feature. That's what it's called.
Yeah. Where we talk about the ARG on Ren's show, and then we play through the game and kind of relate the two on my show, Fan Game Folly. So keep your eyes out for all of that fresh content for you to sate yourself with.
Can someone link the Twitter for Serious Play?
David, you're the Twitter guy.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I can't believe I forgot about that.
So
all right.
I will talk to you later. It was a great stream. It was a fun. I'm looking very much forward to the interview and everything else that we have planned and all that jazz.
Once David gets the Twitter in the chat, I think we're going to end it. So thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and we will let the lo-fi kind of play us out. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.